The savage life of a space wolf is not what the Imperium believes. I still remember the taste of my own blood on that first night, when the fangs began to grow. True Fenrisian fangs. They pushed through my gums during the fever dreams, splitting flesh as they descended. We are called the Emperor's executioners, his wolves of war. But what the Imperium does not understand is that we do not simply wear the wolf as our symbol. We become the wolf. It lives in us, grows in us, and eventually, for some of us, it consumes us entirely. I watch my brothers fight the change, their bodies twisting, their minds slipping closer to the beast with each battle. The question that haunts my dreams is whether we truly tame the beast within, or merely delay the inevitable surrender to its call. Are we warriors blessed with the strength of wolves, or are we simply monsters waiting to be born? I am Bjornrik Haldvar of Fenris, once a tribesman who hunted the great kraken of the world sea. Now something far less and infinitely more than human. The Allfather has remade me in the image of Russ, our Primarch, but Russ himself was touched by the wildness of our home world. Fenris marks its children forever. The question that haunts my dreams is whether we truly tame the beast within, or merely delay the inevitable surrender to its call. My saga begins as all Space Wolf sagas do, in ice and blood. In the trials of Asserheim, where boys die so that warriors might be born. But unlike the tales told in mead halls across the Imperium, there is no glory in our transformation, only pain, madness, and the slow death of everything human within us. The Remembrancer who chronicled our great company's latest campaign called us heroes. He spoke of honor and courage, of savage nobility. I watched him write these lies with steady hands, never once looking into our eyes, for if he had truly seen us, truly understood what we become in the heat of battle, he would have written only of monsters. The fang rises from the surface of Fenris like a spear thrust into the heart of the sky. It was my home now, though home is perhaps too gentle a word for a fortress monastery carved from a mountain of ice and stone. I remember standing at the base of that impossible structure, my village clothing in tatters, my body broken from the trials that had claimed the lives of 100 other aspirants. I was 12 Terran years old, though on Fenris, with its punishing orbital cycle, I had seen only 3 winters. 3 winters was enough to learn that survival required savagery. The wolf priest spoke of transformation as a rebirth, but what awaited me was not birth but a calculated dismemberment. They would tear apart the boy from the ice plains and rebuild him as a weapon. The helix, they called it, the sacred gene seed of Russ himself. But gene seed is too clinical a term for what invaded my body. It was a contagion of strength and fury, rewriting what the Emperor intended for humanity. The weak will not survive the change, the wolf priest told us, his face a maze of ritual scars and weathered lines. Pray to the Allfather that you are not among them. We did not pray. Sons of Fenris do not beg, even to gods. Instead, we snarled our defiance at death, even as it claimed 2 aspirants that very night. Their bodies rejected the genetic modifications, their organs liquefying as the Canis Helix searched their souls and found them unworthy. I remember their screams most clearly, not for their volume or desperation, but for how quickly they transformed from human cries to animal howls. Even in death, the wolf began to emerge. The initiation chamber beneath the fang was ancient beyond reckoning, its walls inscribed with runes whose meanings had been lost even to the eldest wolf priests. We were brought there in chains, not of metal but of frost-numbed muscle and fear-paralyzed will, 20 survivors of the original 300 aspirants, 20 pale, scarred bodies lying on stone slabs, older than the Imperium itself. Blood calls to blood, intoned the wolf priest as he moved between us, a ceremonial knife in his gnarled hand. The blood of Russ calls to the worthy. The knife was ancient iron, not the master-crafted power weapons carried by full battle brothers. This ritual required older, cruder tools. He sliced open my chest with mechanical precision, the pain blinding but somehow distant, as if happening to someone else. Into the wound, He placed a small vial of liquid that burned like the most caustic acid. "Drink of the cup of wrath," he whispered as he moved to the next aspirant. "Drink deep." What followed was not transformation but annihilation. My bones broke and reformed. My organs shut down and were replaced by artificial glands and secondary systems. My blood boiled in my veins as the Canis helix, the wolf-touch gene seed of Rus, spread through my body like a tide of molten metal. The human mind cannot comprehend such pain. It shuts down, retreats. Into that void rushed something else. Something with fangs and claws and a hunger that could never be sated. I felt it circling in my consciousness, testing the boundaries of my identity, searching for weakness. "Fight it," growled a voice near my ear, though no one stood beside my slab. "Fight it, but do not reject it. Those who reject the wolf die. Those who surrender to it become the lost ones. You must find the narrow path between." I had no concept of time during those days. Pain became a universe unto itself, expanding and contracting with each ragged breath. My senses, already preternaturally sharp from a childhood spent hunting in Fenrisian darkness, became overwhelming conduits of information. I could smell the fear sweat of the aspirant 10 slabs away. I could hear the labored beating of his twin hearts as they struggled to establish their rhythm. 13 survived the initial transformation. 7 bodies were burned in the sacred fires, their ashes scattered on the winds of Asaheim, to return their strength to the world that had birthed them. We 13 were no longer human, but neither were we yet space wolves. We existed in the torturous middle ground, our bodies transformed but our minds still catching up to the new reality of our existence. "Now comes the blooding," announced the wolf priest when we could finally stand upright again. "Now we see if the wolf accepts you as pack." They brought us to the surface of Fenris, to a vast ice plain where the aurora borealis painted the night in shades of green and blue. The cold hit my bare skin like a physical blow, but the pain was clarifying after the fever dreams of transformation. I looked at my brothers, truly seeing them for the first time since the ritual began. We were changed, taller, broader, our bodies corded with unnaturally dense muscle. But it was our eyes that truly marked the depth of our transformation. No longer human eyes, but the gold-flecked irises of predators, wolf eyes, staring out from human faces. The wolf priest placed 13 spears in the ice before us, primitive weapons, tipped with the teeth of Fenrisian wolves. Beside the spears lay 13 sets of crude armor, fashioned from the hides of the same beasts. "Take up your weapons," he commanded. "Don your armor. Tonight, you hunt with the pack, or you die beneath their fangs." The howls began as the final light of day disappeared behind Fenris's vast mountain ranges. Not the howls of men imitating beasts, but the genuine calls of true Fenrisian wolves, monstrous creatures that could tear a normal human limb from limb with casual ease. They were coming for us. The wolf priest had summoned the pack, and now we would either join it or become its prey. "Remember," the wolf priest said as he retreated toward the distant outline of a gunship, "you are neither beast nor man now. You are something in between. Find that balance, or the ice will drink your blood before dawn." Then we were alone, 13 transformed, boys clutching spears on an ice field, with the howls of approaching predators echoing across the plain. What happened that night exists in my memory as a series of disjointed images, like a broken pict capture flickering in the darkness. The first wolf that came for me was a scarred male, its shoulders standing as high as my chest despite my new height. Its fangs were yellowed ivory daggers, its breath steam in the frozen air. I remember raising my spear, the training of the aspirant trials guiding my movements, but something else guided me too, something deeper and more primal than any combat doctrine. The wolf within recognized the wolf without, and in that recognition came understanding. I did not fight as a human warrior with a spear. I fought as a wolf fights, with total commitment and no concept of retreat. When the beast lunged, I met it halfway, driving my body into its mass while simultaneously angling my spear into the soft flesh beneath its jaw. Hot blood sprayed across my face and chest, instantly freezing in the Fenrisian cold. The taste of it awoke something in me. The iron tang of blood combined with the musk of wolf and the sharp edge of adrenaline created a cocktail that sent my enhanced senses into overdrive. I found myself snarling, lips pulled back from lengthening canines, as I wrenched the spear free and prepared to meet the next attacker. They came in waves, these wolves. Not mindless beasts, but coordinated hunters testing our strength and resolve. 2 of my brothers fell that night, their blood steaming briefly on the ice before freezing into crimson crystals. The rest of us fought with increasing savagery as the night wore on, our movements becoming less human and more lupine with each passing hour. By dawn, the surviving 11 of us stood surrounded by the corpses of wolves, our bodies covered in blood, both theirs and our own. But we were not alone. Circling us at a respectful distance was the remainder of the wolf pack, led by an enormous alpha whose fur was as white as the surrounding snow. The wolf priest approached across the battlefield, his armor frost-rimed but majestic in the pink light of dawn. Behind him walked a figure whose presence sent us all to our knees in the bloodied snow. Wolf Lord Crom Dragongaze, master of the Third Great Company, had come to witness our blooding. His Terminator armor was adorned with trophies from 100 campaigns, his wolf pelt cloak rippling in the Arctic wind, but it was his eyes that held me transfixed. Colder than the depths of the void, yet burning with an inner fire that spoke of barely restrained violence. "Rise, whelps," he growled, his voice like stone grinding against stone. "You have survived the night. Now we shall see if you are worthy to hunt in my pack." At his gesture, the alpha wolf that had been watching us approached. None of us moved as the massive creature walked straight to Crom and sat at his side, like a trained hound rather than a wild apex predator. "The pack has judged you," Crom announced. "Those who fell were weak. Those who stand have earned the right to become Bloodclaws." Bloodclaws, the most junior rank of the Space Wolves, assigned to the front lines of every engagement, where their aggression and lack of discipline could be channeled against the enemy. I felt no pride at the pronouncement, only a strange hollowness. I had survived, but the boy from the ice plains was truly dead now. What stood in his place was something caught between worlds. "You belong to me now," Crom continued, his gaze sweeping across our bloodied forms. "Your lives are mine to spend in the Emperor's service. Your deaths are mine to offer to the foes of mankind. From this day forward, you have no family but the pack, no purpose but war, no loyalty but to Russ, the Allfather, and me." They gave us our new names that day. No longer would I be known by the name my human parents had bestowed. Now I was simply Bjornrik, Bloodclaw of Crom, Dragongaze's great company. My identity had been stripped down to my function as a weapon of war. As we were led back to the Fang, I glanced over my shoulder at the ice field where we had fought. Servitors were already collecting the bodies of the fallen, both wolf and aspirant. Their blood had mingled on the ice, indistinguishable from one another. In that moment, I understood a fundamental truth about what I had become. We are called the Space Wolves, but the name is not mere symbolism. The beast lurks within us all. Some brothers embrace it too fully and are lost to the wolfen curse, becoming the very monsters we are purported to hunt. Others deny it and suffer for their resistance. The path of the Space Wolf is to acknowledge the beast, to draw strength from it, but never to fully surrender to its call. It would be many years before I understood how narrow that path truly was, or how many of my brothers would stray from it into savagery beyond redemption. The first time I killed in the name of the Emperor, I felt nothing but the wolf's joy in the hunt. We were deployed to a small mining world in the Loki sector, a place whose name I have long forgotten. A routine compliance action, the wolf priest called it. The planetary governor had withheld imperial tithes for 3 consecutive cycles, claiming economic hardship while his personal wealth grew. Such matters would normally be handled by the Imperial Guard or even local enforcers. But we were newly blooded Bloodclaws, and Crom Dragongaze believed in practical education. We were sent to make an example, to ensure no other worlds in the sector would consider similar transgressions. I remember the weight of my chainsword, the unfamiliar press of power armor against my still healing flesh. We had not yet earned our true battle plate, instead wearing the stripped-down carapace armor of blood claws. It chafed in places, sat too heavily in others. The machine spirit of the armor had not yet bonded with me, had not learned my movements or preferences. "Simple mission," growled Ironblood, our pack leader. A grizzled veteran with a bionic eye and more campaigns under his belt than I had years of life. "We drop, we find the governor, we return with his head. Any resistance is to be eliminated with extreme prejudice." There were 9 of us on that first hunt, 9 blood claws, eager to prove ourselves, to spill first blood in the service of the chapter. The drop pod slammed into the ceremonial gardens of the governor's palace with bone-jarring force. Before the doors had fully opened, I was already tasting blood in my mouth, not from injury, but from anticipation. The Canis helix responds to the proximity of violence, preparing the body for combat in ways both subtle and grotesque. I felt my canines lengthening, pressing against my lower lip. My vision sharpened, colors bleeding away to leave only movement and potential threats. The wolf was awakening, and I welcomed its hunger. The palace guards were PDF troopers, local militia with flak armor and standard-issue lasguns. They might as well have been armed with sticks for all the harm they could do to Astartes, even freshly minted ones like us. I still remember the look on the first guard's face as I emerged from the drop pod. Not fear, not at first. Something more like confusion, as if his mind could not properly categorize what he was seeing. By the time fear bloomed in his eyes, my chainsword was already arcing toward his neck. The resistance, such as it was, lasted less than 10 minutes. We moved through the palace like a storm, our bolters and blades reaping a bloody harvest. I killed 17 men that day. I remember the number precisely, because each death felt significant, a milestone in my new existence, but it was the governor himself who truly taught me what I had become. We found him cowering in a panic room beneath his private chambers. Ironblood ripped the reinforced door from its hinges with his power fist, the adamantium crumpling like parchment in his grasp. The man who had defied the Imperium's tithes was fat, soft, his fine robes stained with sweat and urine. He babbled as we entered, offering wealth, women, whatever we desired if only we would spare his life. "The Allfather's justice recognizes no bribes," Ironblood said, his voice surprisingly formal as he recited the ritual words. "Crom Dragon Gaze sends his regards." He gestured to me, the youngest of the pack. "The whelp needs blooding." "Finish it, pup." I stepped forward, chainsword dripping with the blood of the governor's guards. Something in me, some last fragment of human compassion, noted the pathetic nature of the man before me. He was no warrior, no worthy opponent. Killing him would bring no glory, no test of skill or strength. "The sword is too good for him." I heard myself growl, my voice distorted by lengthened canines and the growing influence of the wolf. "The Allfather demands tribute, the wolf demands meat." What happened next exists in my memory behind a crimson veil. I know I dropped my chainsword. I know I fell upon the governor with hands and teeth. I know the taste of his blood, remarkably similar to that of the Fenrisian wolves during my blooding. When awareness returned, my brothers were watching me with new eyes. Not disgust or horror, but recognition. They saw in my blood-soaked face and gore-covered hands a reflection of the beast within themselves. Ironblood nodded once, then tossed me a chain axe taken from the wall of the governor's trophy room. "Clean yourself up, pup. You fight like a true son of Russ. Perhaps there is hope for you yet." We took the governor's head, as ordered. What remained of his body was unrecognizable as human. On the return flight to our strike cruiser, I sat apart from my brothers, trying to reconcile what I had done with the person I had once been. There was no guilt, no remorse, only a strange sense of inevitability, as if I had finally acted in accordance with my true nature. The wolf priest who debriefed us seemed to sense my inner conflict. He found me later in the ship's chapel, not praying, but sitting in silence before the stern visage of Leman Russ. "The first hunt is always the most revealing," he said, his voice like gravel shifting underfoot. "It shows us who we truly are beneath the trappings of civilization." "And what am I?" I asked, not looking up at him. "What does this make me?" "You are a weapon, forged in the fires of Fenris and tempered in the blood of mankind's enemies," he replied without hesitation. "But a weapon must be controlled, must be wielded with purpose. The wolf must hunt, but it hunts at the direction of its master. And if the wolf slips its leash?" I finally turned to face him. "What then?" The wolf priest's face remained impassive, but something flickered behind his ancient eyes. Fear, perhaps, or resignation. "Then you become that which we are sworn to destroy," he said simply. "The lost ones, the wolfen. Those who surrender entirely to the beast and forsake their oaths to the All-Father." He placed a gnarled hand on my shoulder, the weight of it somehow reassuring despite the grim conversation. "The path of the space wolf is to exist in perfect balance. We embrace the beast within, draw strength from its primal fury, but never allow it to consume us entirely. This is the burden we bear, the price of our chapter's power." I nodded slowly, understanding for the first time the true nature of the transformation I had undergone. I was no longer merely a warrior, no longer simply a space marine. I was a container for something ancient and terrible, something that predated humanity's ascension to the stars. "Rest now," the wolf priest said as he turned to leave. "Tomorrow you will be assigned to your permanent pack. The real war begins then." As he walked away, I called after him, a question that had been burning in my mind since that night on the ice fields of Fenris. "How do you know?" I asked. "How do you know when you have gone too far, when the balance has tipped?" The wolf priest paused but did not turn around. His voice, when it came, was barely above a whisper. "When you no longer need to ask that question," he said. "When the beast's hunger becomes your only truth. That is when we lose you." With those words, he left me alone in the chapel, the eyes of Russ staring down at me from his golden icon. I could have sworn those painted eyes held the same inner conflict I now felt raging within my transformed body. The perfect tension between man and wolf, civilization and savagery, control and abandonment. It was a conflict I would revisit many times in the decades to come, as the galaxy burned around us and the enemies of mankind grew ever more numerous and terrible. The wolf would always be there, waiting for moments of weakness, offering its strength in exchange for control. Sometimes, in the heat of battle, I would accept that bargain. Other times, I would resist its siren call. But always, I remembered the wolf priest's warning. The true horror was not that we might become beasts in the Emperor's service. The true horror was that we might come to see no difference between the beast and ourselves. Word count so far, 3,969. The next morning, I was assigned to Bloodclaw Pack Grimfang under Wolfguard Pack leader Thorgrim Redfist. The pack consisted of 8 Bloodclaws, including myself, each of us newly blooded and hungry for battle. We were a volatile combination of enhanced strength, limited experience, and the ever-present influence of the Canis Helix working its changes upon our minds and bodies. "Listen well, whelps," Thorgrim addressed us in the armory as we were fitted with our war gear. His face was a roadmap of old scars, one eye replaced with a red augmetic lens that constantly whirred and clicked as it adjusted focus. "You survived your first taste of blood. Do not let it make you overconfident. True war is nothing like culling a fat governor and his toy soldiers." He paced before us, his Terminator armor making each step a thunderous declaration of power. Servo motors whined as he moved, ancient ceramite plate adorned with runes and totems collected over centuries of service. Thorgrim was old, even by Astartes standards. Rumors among the Bloodclaws suggested he had fought in the War of the Beast, though none dared ask him directly. "You belong to Pack Grimfang now," he continued. "Your brothers are your strength. Your brothers are your shield. Lone wolves die, but the pack endures. Remember that when the killing starts and the wolf within begins to howl for blood. We received our chapter colors that day. The armor of the Space Wolves is a distinctive gray, the color of Fenrisian granite. As blood claws, our shoulder pauldrons were marked with the sigil of our rank, a red slash like a fresh wound against the gray. We were not yet permitted to adorn our armor with the personal trophies and fetishes that decorated the plate of more experienced brothers. Those honors would be earned in battle, each campaign adding its mark to our war gear until it told the story of our service. Within a week, we were deployed on our first true campaign. The Holothur system had reported Xenos activity along its outer mining colonies. Initial investigations by Imperial Navy patrols suggested Orc involvement, but the situation had escalated beyond their capacity to contain. The Wolf Lord himself briefed the assembled great company aboard our strike cruiser, the Frostfang. Crom Dragongaze stood upon the command dais, his massive form dominating the space, his voice carrying to every corner of the briefing chamber without need of amplification. "The greenskin filth despoil the Emperor's worlds," he growled, his hand resting on the pommel of a frost blade almost as tall as a human man. "They mistake his mercy for weakness. They mistake our distance for disinterest. We shall correct these misconceptions." With bolter and blade, a strategic hololith flickered to life beside him, displaying the Holothur system's planets and orbital installations. Several areas pulsed an angry red, indicating confirmed Orc presence. Intelligence suggests a minor WAAGAGH. In its formative stages, Crom continued, gesturing to the largest concentration of hostile indicators. A war boss calling himself Grimskull Gutrippa has united several clans and established a foothold on Holothur Prime. The Adeptus Mechanicus values the forges there. They have requested our intervention before irreplaceable technology is lost. He smiled then, a predatory showing of enlarged canines that had nothing to do with humor and everything to do with anticipation of violence. "We are only too happy to oblige. The Sons of Russ have a long and storied history of breaking greenskin skulls." The plan was direct, as Space Wolf strategies tended to be. While the majority of the Great Company would assault the primary Orc stronghold on Holothur Prime, Pack Grimfang and 2 other Bloodclaw packs would be deployed to the orbital mining stations where smaller Orc parties were raiding for materials and technology. "Your objective is simple," Thorgrim told us as we prepared our war gear for the coming battle. "Kill every greenskin you find, secure the stations, protect the tech priests and whatever machine spirits they are so concerned about. Any questions?" One of my pack brothers, Ulfar, raised his hand. "What resistance should we expect, pack leader?" Thorgrim's augmetic eye whirred as it focused on Ulfar. "Orcs, big, green, and stupid. But never underestimate their capacity for violence or their surprising cunning in matters of war. They are born knowing how to fight, unlike you whelps, who must be taught." He hefted his thunder hammer, an ancient weapon whose head was carved to resemble a snarling wolf. "Watch, learn, obey. Do these things, and you might live long enough to earn a name worth remembering in the Resemple sagas." The drop pods screamed through Holothur's thin atmosphere like falling meteors. I was strapped in beside my pack brothers, the restraints biting into my power armor as deceleration forces threatened to pulverize even our enhanced bodies. The wolf within me snarled at the confinement, at the helplessness of our descent. I forced it down, focusing instead on the mission objectives and the litanies of battle that the wolf priests had taught us. Impact came with a bone-jarring force that would have killed unaugmented humans instantly. To us, it was merely uncomfortable. The pod's doors blew outward on explosive bolts, and we charged into the artificial gravity of mining station Secundus. The scene that greeted us was one of carnage and destruction. The station's corridors were littered with the corpses of mining personnel and security forces. Blood had sprayed across the metal walls in patterns that spoke of extreme violence. The stench of death hung heavy in the recycled air, along with the distinctive musk of Orc. "Spread out, 2 by 2, Thorgrim commanded over the Vox. Secure this level, then we move deeper. The tech priests believe the greenskins are after the station's plasma distribution hub. I advanced with Ulfar, bolter raised, senses alert for any sign of the enemy. The orcs had a distinctive smell, a combination of fungal spores, poorly tanned leather, and the oil they used on their crude weapons. That scent grew stronger as we moved through the station's main processing deck. The attack, when it came, was sudden and vicious. A section of wall that appeared solid turned out to be a crude camouflage covering. It burst apart as 5 orcs charged through, roaring their battle cries, crude axes and shooters held high. My training took over instantly. I dropped to one knee, bolter braced against my shoulder, and fired a 3-round burst into the chest of the lead orc. The mass-reactive shells penetrated its leather armor and detonated inside its torso, blowing a ragged hole through its back. Beside me, Ulfar engaged another with his chainsword, the whirring teeth biting into green flesh with a spray of dark blood. The remaining 3 split their attention between us, 2 coming for me while the third swung a massive wrench at Ulfar's exposed flank. I had no time to warn him. The 2 orcs bearing down on me required my full attention. I fired again, catching one in the face, its head disappearing in a red mist. The last one reached me before I could adjust my aim, its crude axe swinging for my neck. I caught the blow on my bolter, the weapon's casing denting but holding. The impact drove me back a step, but my enhanced strength prevented me from being overwhelmed. With my free hand, I drew my combat knife, thrusting it upward into the soft flesh beneath the orc's jaw. The beast roared in pain and fury, its blood hot and viscous as it poured over my gauntlet. It did not die, however. Orcs were notoriously difficult to kill, their bizarre physiology allowing them to survive wounds that would be instantly fatal to humans. The wolf stirred then, sensing my frustration and the immediate danger. I felt my lips pull back from lengthened canines, heard a growl vibrate through my chest that had nothing to do with my Vox unit. With strength born of the Canis Helix, I twisted the knife and ripped it sideways, nearly severing the orc's head. As it fell, I turned to check on Ulfar. He had dispatched his original opponent but was now grappling with the third orc, their bodies locked together in a contest of raw strength. Even with his Astartes physiology, Ulfar was struggling. The orc had him pinned against a processing unit, the wrench pressed horizontally across his throat. I raised my bolter, but there was no clear shot. They were too entangled, and a miss might damage critical station infrastructure. Instead, I charged, driving my shoulder into the orc's side with all the force my power armor could deliver. The impact sent all 3 of us crashing through a flimsy partition wall into an adjacent storage compartment. Equipment and supply crates shattered under our combined weight. The orc lost its grip on the wrench, and Ulfar, momentarily dazed, fell away from the struggle. Now it was just the orc and me, face to face in the confined space of the storage room. It grinned, revealing crude metal teeth implanted in its green gums, and reached for a jagged piece of metal that had broken free from a storage crate. Wah! It bellowed, the universal orc battle cry echoing in the small space. Crump Dahumi! I had lost my bolter in the collision. My knife remained embedded in the throat of the previous orc. I was effectively unarmed against an opponent whose natural strength rivaled my own enhanced capabilities. The wolf did not see this as a disadvantage. It saw only prey, only the hunt. My vision tunneled, the edges blurring as the Canis Helix flooded my system with combat stimulants. Time seemed to slow as the orc lunged with its improvised weapon. I sidestepped, faster than even my transhuman reflexes should have allowed, and seized the orc's weapon arm at the wrist. With a savage twist, I snapped the bones, drawing a roar of pain from the greenskin. But orcs did not surrender, did not retreat. It swung its free hand in a haymaker punch that would have decapitated a normal human. I caught the blow on my forearm, ceramite plate cracking under the impact. Pain lanced up my arm, but it was distant, muted by the battle haze of the wolf. I twisted inside the orc's reach, my gauntleted hands finding its throat, thumbs pressing into its windpipe. The orc thrashed and fought, its single functioning hand battering at my helmet and pauldrons. I felt ceramite crack, felt the auto-sealant systems of my armor engage to prevent atmosphere loss. None of it mattered. The wolf had the scent of blood now, had its teeth in prey. There would be no release until the kill was complete. I bore the orc to the ground, my weight and armor pressing it into the deck plates. Its struggles grew weaker as my thumbs crushed its throat, its eyes bulging in their sockets. In its final moments, there was something like recognition in those red orbs. Not fear. Orcs knew little of fear, but an understanding of defeat at the hands of a superior predator. When it finally went still, I remained atop it, hands still locked around its throat, unwilling or unable to release my grip. It took Ulfar physically pulling me away to break the killing trance. "Brother," he said, his voice tinny through the vox grill of his helmet. "It is done. The beast is dead." I looked down at the orc, then at my gauntlets, covered in its dark blood and flecks of green skin. The wolf receded slowly, reluctantly, leaving me shaking with the aftermath of combat stims and the raw energy of the helix. "More coming?" Thorgrim's voice crackled over the vox. "Converge on the central processing hub. The tech priests are holed up there with whatever machine spirit they are so desperate to protect." We retrieved our weapons and moved out, stepping over the corpses of the orcs we had slain. As we jogged through the station corridors, Ulfar gave me a sideways glance. "You fought like one possessed back there, brother," he said, his tone careful, measuring. "The wolf priests warn us about giving too much to the beast within. I wanted to deny it, to claim I had been in perfect control. But the evidence was there in my shattered forearm plate, in the deep dents where the orc had struck my armor while I focused solely on killing it rather than protecting myself. We are what we are," I replied finally. "The wolf gives us strength." Ulfar said nothing more, but I could sense his disquiet. He had seen something in my combat trance that troubled him, something that went beyond the normal savagery of the Bloodclaws. We reached the central hub to find the rest of Pack Grimfang already engaged with a larger orc force. The greenskins had breached the armored doors and were pouring into the circular chamber where 3 red-robed tech priests stood in a defensive formation around a glowing stasis containment unit. Thorgrim was in the thick of combat, his thunderhammer creating devastating shockwaves with each impact, sending orc bodies flying in broken heaps. The other Bloodclaws fought with the wild abandon typical of our rank, chainswords revving and bolt pistols barking in a deafening cacophony of violence. We charged without hesitation, adding our weapons to the fray. The battle became a swirling melee of bodies, blood, and brutality. I emptied my bolter into the mass of green flesh, each mass-reactive round finding a target in the densely packed orcs. When ammunition ran dry, I switched to my combat knife, recovered from the previous engagement. Time lost meaning in the press of combat. Each moment existed only as a series of threats to identify and neutralize. An orc with a crude flamer advancing on an injured pack brother. A burly knob directing smaller greenskins with sweeping gestures of a power claw. A mob of Gretchen attempting to flank our position and reach the tech priests. I moved from threat to threat, my actions guided by training but fueled by the primal instinct of the wolf. The knife in my hand became an extension of my will, opening green throats and puncturing vital organs with mechanical efficiency. When the knife blade finally shattered against the thick skull of a particularly large orc, I continued with gauntleted fists and fangs that had fully extended in the heat of battle. "Secure the package," Thorgrim ordered over the vox as the last of the orcs fell. "The tech priests say more greenskins are inbound." We moved to extraction point Alpha immediately. I approached the tech priests, their red robes now splattered with darker stains of orc blood. The lead figure, his face a mass of augmetics and wiring, gestured to the stasis unit. "The data core must reach. Holothur Prime intact," he intoned, his voice a mechanical monotone. "The knowledge within is irreplaceable." Thorgrim nodded curtly. "Pack Grimfang will ensure delivery. Prepare for immediate evacuation." As we formed a protective cordon around the tech priests and their precious cargo, I caught Thorgrim watching me. His augmetic eye whirred as it focused, scanning my blood-drenched armor and the exposed lower half of my face, where my helmet had been partially shattered in the fighting. "You fought well today, whelp," he said, his voice pitched for my ears alone. "Perhaps too well. The wolf marks you strongly." Before I could respond, the Vox crackled with an urgent transmission. "Inbound hostiles, numbers exceeding previous engagement. Estimate contact in 3 minutes." Thorgrim turned away, his moment of concern replaced by the immediate demands of command. "Move out. Double time. We will not die on this Emperor-forsaken scrap heap." The journey to the extraction point was a fighting retreat through increasingly narrow corridors. The orcs pursued relentlessly, their crude weapons chewing through the station's internal structures in their eagerness to reach us. We left a trail of defensive positions, each held just long enough to bleed the greenskin advance before falling back to the next choke point. 2 of our pack brothers fell during the retreat. Jorin took a slugger round to the neck joint of his armor, the large caliber bullet severing his spine despite his enhanced physiology. Hrolf was overwhelmed by a mob of orcs that crashed through a maintenance duct, his death marked by a final defiant howl over the Vox before his signal went silent. The deaths of our brothers fueled the wolf within each of us. Our retreat became more savage, our counterattacks more ferocious. When we finally reached the extraction point, a docking bay where a Thunderhawk gunship waited with engines hot, we were no longer fighting as disciplined Astartes. We were fighting as the beasts of Fenris, with tooth and claw and desperate fury. The Thunderhawk's assault ramp lowered to reveal a wolf priest and 2 squads of grey hunters, more experienced brothers who had mastered the balance between man and wolf. They provided covering fire as we loaded the tech priests and their precious cargo onto the gunship. "Hurry, you whelps," called the wolf priest, his staff crackling with energy as he directed the retreat. "The station's reactor is destabilizing. The orcs have damaged it beyond recovery." Thorgrim was the last to board, his massive Terminator armor moving with surprising speed as he backed up the ramp, Thunderhammer sweeping in great arcs to keep the pursuing orcs at bay. The ramp began to close even as he cleared the threshold, the Thunderhawk's engines screaming as the pilot executed an emergency launch procedure. We were thrown against our restraint harnesses as the gunship pulled a high G turn away from the station. Through the viewport, I watched as the orbital structure receded, then suddenly blossomed into a sphere of white-hot plasma as its reactor finally failed. The shockwave hit us seconds later, rocking the Thunderhawk violently but causing no serious damage. "Your first real hunt," the wolf priest said as he moved among us, attending to our wounds with practiced efficiency. "The first of many. You fought well. You bled well. You honored your fallen brothers." His eyes, ancient and knowing, lingered on my face. "Some of you felt the call of the wolf more strongly than others. This is both blessing and curse. Remember that you serve the All-Father first, the chapter second, and the wolf last." I nodded, but said nothing. The wolf had retreated with the end of combat, but its presence remained, a shadow at the edges of my consciousness. I had tasted blood, true combat blood, and found it sweeter than anything in my previous existence. Part of me already longed for the next hunt, the next opportunity to lose myself in the red haze of battle. The campaign on Holothur lasted for 3 standard months. Pack Grimfang fought in a dozen more engagements, from void battles aboard orc space hulks to subterranean conflicts in the mining tunnels of Holothur Prime. We lost 2 more brothers, their names added to the sagas by the wolf priests, their gene seed harvested to create future generations of space wolves. By the time Crom Dragongaze declared the WARG broken and the system secured, I had killed more enemies than I could accurately count. My armor bore the scars of countless battles, my body beneath it marked with fresh wounds that even my enhanced healing could not erase without trace. I had changed, as had all my surviving pack brothers. The wolf had grown stronger with each engagement, its hunger more difficult to ignore in the quiet moments between conflicts. After our return to the Fang, I was summoned to appear before Iron Priest Jurgen, the keeper of relics for our great company. His workshop was a cavern of controlled chaos, filled with half-disassembled weapons, armor in various states of repair, and servitors moving with mindless purpose among the workbenches. "Your armor is a disgrace," Jurgen growled without preamble, his mechadendrites clicking in apparent agitation. "You treat sacred war gear like a disposable shell rather than the holy artifact it is." I stood at attention, saying nothing. Iron priests were known for their tempers and their devotion to the physical trappings of the chapter. To them, a Space Wolf's armor and weapons were extensions of his honor, to be maintained with the same care one would give to a sacred oath. Jurgen circled me, multiple optical sensors whirring as they assessed the damage to my plate. Cracked ceramite, compromised power conduits, auto-sealant depleted beyond acceptable parameters. He clicked his tongue, the sound oddly human amid the mechanical additions to his body. "You fight without regard for yourself or your equipment, Bloodclaw." It was not a question, so I offered no defense. Jurgen continued his inspection, occasionally muttering in binary cant to a hovering servo skull that recorded his observations. "Thorgrim tells me you show promise," he said finally, coming to stand before me. "He also says the wolf marks you strongly. An interesting combination. Potential tempered by risk." He gestured to a suit of armor standing on a maintenance rack nearby. Unlike the standard plate of a Bloodclaw, this armor was adorned with primitive totems and decorative elements, its surface inscribed with Fenrisian runes of protection and strength. "Your battle record has earned you the right to proper war gear," Jurgen announced. This armor belonged to Skorason Frostbeard, a grey hunter who fell against the Tyrannid filth on Moraz III. "It has been repaired, reconsecrated, and modified to accommodate your particular fighting style." I approached the armor with reverence. To receive the war gear of a fallen brother was an honor, a recognition that I had proven myself worthy of the legacy it represented. The armor was magnificent, each plate a work of art as well as a masterpiece of defensive technology. "It will not protect you if you continue to fight with such disregard for your own survival," Jurgen warned, his tone softening slightly. "Learn balance, whelp. The most dangerous weapon is the one that endures." The armor of Skorason Frostbeard fit me as if it had been crafted specifically for my body. The machine spirit within it was strong, responsive, adapting quickly to my movements and preferences. It felt right in a way my previous armor never had, as if some echo of its former wearer recognized a kindred spirit in me. With new armor came new responsibilities. Following the Holothur campaign, Pack Grimfang was assigned increasingly complex missions. We moved beyond simple compliance actions and greenskin extermination to operations that required subtlety alongside strength. Surgical strikes against heretic strongholds, recovery of ancient technology from dead worlds, elimination of Xenos threats before they could fully materialize. Through it all, the wolf within me grew. Each battle fed its strength, each kill reinforced its dominance in the balance of my being. I began to experience episodes between engagements, moments where the beast would surface without the stimulus of combat. A brother would make a casual jest, and I would find my hand at his throat before conscious thought could intervene. A chapter serf would approach too quickly, and I would spin with fangs bared, ready to rip out his throat for the imagined threat. Thorgrim noticed. The wolf priests noticed. I was called for additional hypno-indoctrination, subjected to rituals meant to reinforce my humanity against the growing influence of the Canis Helix. For a time, these measures seemed effective. The wolf retreated, becoming once more a controllable aspect of my enhanced nature, rather than a constant presence threatening to overwhelm my identity. Then came Forsken V, the campaign that would define my existence as a space wolf and bring me face to face with the true horror of what I might become. Forsken V was an agri-world on the eastern fringe, a sparsely populated planet of vast crop fields and scattered human settlements. Initial reports suggested a small group of chaos cultists had taken root among the population, their influence spreading like a cancer through the planetary government. The Third Great Company was dispatched to excise this taint before it could fully metastasize. What we found upon arrival was far worse than cultist activity. The planet had fallen to a gene-stealer infestation, the alien parasites corrupting the human population over several generations until nearly 80% were hybrid abominations, loyal only to the tyrannid hive mind. By the time we realized the true nature of the threat, our forces were scattered across the planet's surface in small strike teams, each isolated and vulnerable to the coordinated attacks of the hybrid swarms. Pack Grimfang, along with 3 squads of Grey Hunters and a venerable dreadnought, had deployed to the planetary capital to secure the governor and his staff for interrogation. We found the government complex abandoned, its corridors showing signs of a hasty evacuation. Deeper inside, we discovered the first evidence of the gene-stealer presence. Bodies of security personnel mutilated in distinctive patterns, their skulls split open and brain matter extracted. Secreted biomass in ventilation shafts. The sweet, cloying scent of Xenos pheromones pervading the air filtration systems. "Full alert," Thorgrim ordered, his voice tight with controlled tension. "This is no cult. Call in extraction immediately." Before the Vox officer could comply, the attack began. They came from everywhere at once, hybrids emerging from hidden passages and maintenance ducts. 4 armed Puristrain gene-stealers dropped from ceiling panels, their claws capable of shredding even Astartes' armor. The ambush was perfectly executed, cutting off our escape routes and isolating pack members from one another. I found myself separated from my brothers, cornered in what had once been the governor's private office. 3 hybrids advanced on me, their once human forms twisted by alien DNA into grotesque parodies of humanity. Their movements were unnaturally fluid, coordinated by the psychic link that bound all tyrannid organisms. My bolter spoke, each shot finding vital organs despite the hybrid's uncanny ability to predict my aim. They fell, but more replaced them, pouring through the doorway in an endless stream. I backed up until my armor plate struck the office's panoramic viewing window, the transparent material offering a view of the city beyond, now alive with the movement of countless hybrid forms converging on the government complex. A Puristrain Genestealer burst through the press of hybrids, its chitinous armor gleaming wetly in the office's lighting, its lipless maw revealing row upon row of needle-like teeth. This was no mere attack beast, but a patriarch or at least a mature leader beast, its movements displaying a terrible intelligence behind the alien hunger. It charged, moving faster than even my enhanced senses could track. I fired my bolter until the magazine ran dry, each round impacting but failing to slow the creature's advance. Then it was upon me, claws raking across my chest plate, scoring deep furrows in the ceramite. I dropped the empty bolter and drew my combat knife, knowing even as I did that the weapon was hopelessly inadequate against such a foe. The gene-stealer's claws found the weak points in my armor with preternatural accuracy, slicing through joint seals and penetrating the black carapace beneath. Pain blossomed as alien talons punctured transhuman flesh. I struck back with the knife, driving it into the creature's thorax with all my enhanced strength, but it seemed to register the wound as a mere annoyance. Its head darted forward, jaws seeking my exposed throat. I twisted aside, the movement reopening wounds from previous campaigns that had never fully healed. The beast pressed its advantage, additional limbs wrapping around my armor, claws finding purchase in the backplate, pulling me into a lethal embrace. In that moment of desperation, facing a death that would mean not just my end but the potential corruption of my gene seed, I surrendered to the wolf, not partially, not temporarily, but completely. I threw open the mental gates that had kept the beast contained, inviting it to take control with a silent howl of defiance against the alien horror that threatened to consume me. The change was immediate and total. My consciousness retreated, becoming a mere observer as something else took command of my body. My bones shifted beneath my skin, the pain distant but intense as my skeletal structure realigned itself. Claws erupted from my fingertips, punching through the ceramite of my gauntlets. My jaw extended, canines lengthening into true fangs capable of rending flesh from bone. The wolfen that I became was neither man nor wolf, but something ancient and terrible that predated both. A beast of old Fenris, a nightmare given form and purpose by the flawed gene seed of Lim Russ. The gene stealer, for all its alien horror, showed the first flicker of something like fear as it faced this new opponent. What followed exists in my memory as fragments, snapshots of violence too extreme for even my transhuman mind to fully process. The sound of chitin cracking beneath claws stronger than power armor. The taste of Xenos ichor, bitter and chemical on a tongue no longer fully human. The dying screech of the patriarch as I tore its head from its shoulders with strength born of genetic corruption and unbridled fury. When awareness returned, I stood alone in the devastated office, surrounded by the dismembered corpses of dozens of gene stealers and hybrids. My armor hung in tatters from a body that had nearly doubled in size. The transformation having torn apart ceramite plate, never designed to accommodate such a change. Blood covered every surface, some of it mine, most of it belonging to the alien abominations I had slaughtered. Most terrifying of all, I was still changing. The wolf, having been given complete control, was reluctant to retreat. I felt my humanity slipping away with each passing second, memories and identity subsumed by predatory instinct and genetic corruption. "Brother," a voice called from the doorway. Thorgrim stood there, his Terminator armor bearing the marks of heavy combat, his thunder hammer dripping with alien fluids. Behind him stood a wolf priest, his staff of office held at the ready, glowing with contained power. I turned to face them, a growl building in a throat no longer capable of human speech. They were Pack, a distant part of me recognized, but the wolf saw only potential threats, approaching its kill ground. I dropped into a crouch, claws leaving gouges in the marble flooring, muscles bunching in preparation for a leap that would carry me into their midst. "Bjornrik Holdvar," the wolf priest intoned, his voice layered with hypnotic patterns and ritual cadences. "Son of Fenris, brother of the Fang, hear my voice through the storm of blood." Something in his words penetrated the fog of bestial rage. A memory of snow and ice, of standing before the wolf priests as a human aspirant, swearing oaths to the Allfather and the Chapter. My charge slowed, uncertain. "The wolf serves the warrior," the priest continued, advancing slowly, his free hand held out in a gesture both commanding and placating. "The warrior serves the Emperor. Remember your oaths, brother. Remember who and what you truly are." The wolf snarled, rejecting the priest's words, fighting to maintain control of the body it had claimed. But the moment of hesitation had created a space for my humanity to reassert itself. I seized that opening with desperate strength, pushing back against the beast, reclaiming fragments of identity from its grasp. The struggle was more painful than any physical wound I had ever endured. It felt as if my soul itself was being torn apart and reassembled, piece by jagged piece. I fell to my knees, body convulsing as the transformation began to reverse itself. Bones shifted back toward human configuration, though not completely. Claws retracted, though they left the tips of my fingers permanently altered. The bestial muzzle that had replaced my face receded, though my canines remained extended beyond even space wolf norm. When it was done, I knelt amid the carnage, a grotesque hybrid of Astartes and Wolfen, not fully transformed like the lost ones, but marked by the curse in ways that could never be hidden. "You were fortunate, brother," the wolf priest said as he examined me. The change was nearly complete. Few return from such a state. Thorgrim watched, from a respectful distance, his expression unreadable behind his helmet, but his body language conveying a wariness I had never seen in him before. "Can he be trusted?" he asked the priest, not speaking to me, but about me, as if I were a dangerous weapon rather than a battle brother. The wolf priest placed a hand on my head, murmuring ritual phrases in the ancient tongue of Fenris. I felt his mind brush against mine, probing the boundaries between man and beast, testing the strength of the walls I had rebuilt around the wolf. "For now," he said finally, "but he will require close observation. The curse has marked him deeply. I was evacuated from Forsken V that day, removed from active duty while the rest of the great company continued the purge of the gene-stealer infestation. My armor, destroyed by the transformation, was melted down and reforged. My weapons were ritually cleansed. My body, forever changed by the experience, became a subject of intense scrutiny by the wolf priests. For 6 months, I underwent a regimen of hypno-indoctrination, ritual purification, and psychological conditioning. They could not remove the taint of the wolfen, the wolf priests explained. The curse was a fundamental aspect of the Canis Helix, the double-edged sword that gave the space wolves their unique abilities and character. But they could help me master it, teach me techniques to maintain control even in the most extreme circumstances. "You walk the knife edge now," the wolf priest told me during one of our sessions. "Neither fully man nor fully beast, this is your burden to bear for the remainder of your service to the All-Father." I accepted this truth without complaint. I had seen the alternative during my transformation. I had felt the wolf's desire to shed every vestige of humanity, to become a creature of pure instinct and violence. That path led only to execution at the hands of my battle brothers or exile to the wilds of Fenris, where the lost ones were sometimes sent to live out their remaining days in bestial savagery. When I was finally cleared to return to active duty, it was not as a blood claw. My experience had aged me spiritually, if not physically, pushing me along the path of development at an accelerated pace. I was reassigned as a lone wolf, a designation usually reserved for the sole survivors of devastated packs who swore an oath of vengeance. In my case, the title had a double meaning. I hunted alone because the wolf within me made close cooperation with a pack dangerous for all involved. I would be deployed alongside regular Great Company forces, but would operate independently, assigned to objectives suited to my unique condition. The first of these deployments came 8 months after Forscan V. A Forge world in the Helix cluster had gone silent, its tithe of weapons and vehicles to the nearby Astra Militarum regiments suddenly ceasing without explanation. The Third Great Company was tasked with investigating and, if necessary, securing the forges for the Imperium. I deployed with the initial strike force but separated from the main body once planetfall was achieved. My orders were to infiltrate the main forge complex while the rest of the company provided a distraction at the main gates. My objective was to determine the status of the Adeptus Mechanicus leadership and, if possible, restore communications with the orbiting fleet. The Forge world was a hellscape of industrial pollution and massive factory complexes. The sky was perpetually black with chemical clouds, the ground covered in a layer of toxic sludge that would have eaten through unprotected human flesh in seconds. Even my power armor's systems registered protests at the environmental conditions, warning runes flickering across my helmet display as I moved through the industrial wasteland. The main forge complex loomed ahead, a mountain of metal and smoke rising from the blasted landscape. No lights showed in its countless windows, no movement detected on the external gantries and loading bays. It appeared abandoned, but my enhanced senses detected the subtle vibrations of active machinery deep within the structure. The forges were still operating, though for what purpose remained to be determined. I found an access point through a waste disposal chute, the tight confines forcing me to remove sections of my armor and carry them as I squeezed through. This vulnerability triggered the wolf's defensive instincts, but I employed the mental techniques taught by the wolf priests, containing the beast's influence to a manageable level. Inside the forge complex, the mystery deepened. The production lines were running at full capacity, but no human or servitor operators were present. Automated systems moved with unsettling precision, constructing weapons and vehicles that were then diverted to a central collection area rather than the normal distribution channels. I followed the flow of completed materials, moving deeper into the complex. The air grew hotter, the background noise of machinery rising to a deafening crescendo. At the heart of the forge, I discovered the answer to the planet's silence. The Adeptus Mechanicus leadership had fallen to some form of technological heresy. They stood arranged in a circle around a pulsating mass of machinery and organic matter, their bodies merged with their creation through mechadendrites and direct neural interfaces. At the center of this abomination was what appeared to be a standard template construct core, but it had been modified in ways that violated every principle of the cult mechanicus. The tech priests were chanting in binary, their augmetic voices creating a pattern that made my enhanced hearing physically painful. Their creation responded, sections of it shifting and reconfiguring as if alive, tendrils of living metal extending to absorb the weapons and vehicles being fed into the chamber. I recognized the signs of warp influence, though this was no conventional chaos. Corruption. This was something colder, more methodical. The tech priests had discovered something ancient in the planet's core, something that promised knowledge but delivered only a new form of slavery. I sent a brief encrypted burst transmission to the orbiting fleet, my helmet system struggling to penetrate the interference generated by the abomination. 3 words, all that was needed to determine the fate of the Forge world. Exterminatus, tech heresy, confirmed. Then I set about completing my secondary objective. None of the corrupted tech priests could be allowed to leave the planet. None of their research could be permitted to survive. I placed melter charges at key structural points around the chamber, the wolf within me snarling with anticipation as I prepared to engage the heretics directly. The fight was brief but vicious. The tech priests, for all their augmetic enhancements, were unprepared for the focused violence of a space wolf. I moved among them like a ghost, combat knife severing the vital connection points between organic and mechanical components, bolt pistol destroying the more heavily armored targets with precision headshots. Their creation proved more resilient. As the last tech priest fell, the machine-organism hybrid seemed to awaken to the threat I posed. Tendrils of living metal whipped toward me with impossible speed, seeking to ensnare and absorb my armor and body into its mass. The wolf surged forward in response to the danger, but this time I did not fight its influence. Instead, I channeled it, allowing the beast's strength and speed to enhance my abilities without surrendering control entirely. My movements became fluid, preternatural, as I dodged the mechanical tentacles and closed with the central mass of the abomination. I emptied my bolt pistol into what appeared to be a central processing node, the mass-reactive shells detonating deep within the hybrid flesh-metal construct. It shuddered but did not die, more appendages erupting from its surface to replace those I had destroyed. With no time remaining before the melter charges detonated, I made a final, desperate attack. I leapt onto the construct itself, my gauntleted hands plunging into its surface, seeking the STC core that appeared to be its heart. The material fought back, attempting to flow around my armor and penetrate its systems. Warning runes flashed across my display as foreign code attacked my armor's machine spirit, trying to subvert its functions. With a howl that was as much wolf as man, I tore the STC core free from the abomination's mass. The entire construct convulsed, its appendages thrashing wildly as its controlling intelligence was ripped away. I had just enough time to activate my jump pack, salvaged from a fallen assault marine during a previous campaign, before the melter charges detonated. The explosion propelled me through the forge complex with devastating force, overwhelming my armor's stabilization systems and sending me crashing through multiple walls. By the time I regained consciousness, the entire facility was in flames, secondary explosions rippling through its structure as volatile materials ignited. I still clutched the STC core, though it appeared dormant now, its alien lights extinguished. This technology was too dangerous to destroy without proper examination by loyal tech priests, but equally dangerous to allow its continued existence. With no better option, I mag-locked it to my armor and began the perilous journey back to the extraction point. The orbital bombardment began before I reached the rendezvous. Lance strikes from the fleet pounded the forge complex, reducing millennia of human engineering to slag in minutes. I watched from a ridge several kilometers away, the wolf within me satisfied by the destruction of the abomination, but the man understanding the tragic necessity of such extreme measures. When I finally rendezvoused with the extraction Thunderhawk, I delivered the STC core. directly to the senior tech priest accompanying our force. His reaction was a mixture of reverence and horror as his sensors analyzed the artifact. "This must go to Mars immediately," he declared, his mechanical voice betraying unusual emotion. "The Fabricator General himself must examine this corruption." Crom Dragongaze disagreed. After reviewing my report and consulting with the Wolf Priests, he ordered the STC core sealed in a stasis container and transferred to the Fang for study by our own Iron Priests. The Tech Priest protested but was overruled. Some technologies were too dangerous to release into the wider Imperium, even into supposedly trustworthy hands. In the years that followed, I continued to serve as a lone wolf, undertaking missions that suited my unique condition. Sometimes I operated alongside wolf scouts, whose independent nature and specialized training made them more compatible with my solitary hunting style. Other times I was attached to great company assaults as a shock trooper, pointed at the enemy's weakest point and unleashed like a precision weapon. Always, the balance between man and beast remained my constant struggle. After each campaign, each kill, the wolf grew stronger, more insistent in its demands. The rituals and mental techniques taught by the wolf priests became less effective with each passing decade. Periods of lucidity grew shorter. Episodes of bestial rage more frequent and difficult to control. On Midgard's Reach, I slaughtered a squad of traitor guardsmen who had surrendered and laid down their arms, the wolf refusing to recognize the concept of quarter. In the Void battle over Thantos IV, I broke formation to pursue a fleeing enemy vessel, ignoring direct orders from Wolf Lord Crom himself. During the third pacification of Garrus, I spent 3 days hunting a dark Eldar Archon through the Underhive, forsaking food, water, and sleep in my single-minded pursuit. After each incident, the wolf priests would subject me to a renewed conditioning, reinforcing the mental barriers between man and beast. But we all recognized the truth, though none spoke it aloud. The curse was claiming me slowly but inevitably. Eventually the wolf would win. The end came 274 years after my induction into the chapter. We were deployed to a death world designated Tertius Gamma, a planet of perpetual twilight and dense, carnivorous vegetation. Intelligence suggested a Chaos Warband had established a base on the planet, using it as a staging ground for raids against nearby Imperial worlds. I was deployed 2 weeks ahead of the main force, tasked with locating the enemy stronghold and assessing their strength. The mission should have been straightforward, the kind of operation I had performed dozens of times before. But Tertius Gamma held secrets beyond the presence of Chaos forces. The planet itself was wrong in ways I struggled to articulate in my mission reports. The vegetation responded to movement with almost sentient purpose. The indigenous fauna displayed behavioral patterns that defied evolutionary logic. Even the atmosphere seemed to carry whispers just below the threshold of conscious perception. I located the Chaos base on the 11th day, a sprawling compound built around what appeared to be a xenostructure of great antiquity. The warband consisted of approximately 200 corrupted Astartes, predominantly word-bearers, along with several thousand cultists and mutant slaves. They were conducting excavations around the xenostructure, removing artifacts that pulsed with baleful energy even at a distance. As I observed their operations from concealment, I became aware of a presence watching me in return. Not the Chaos forces, who remained oblivious to my surveillance, but something else. Something ancient and patient that had slumbered beneath the planet's surface until the Word-bearer's excavations disturbed it. That night, as I prepared my final intelligence report, before the arrival of the Great Company, it spoke to me. Not in words, but in images and sensations projected directly into my mind. It showed me visions of Fenris before human settlement, when the great Fenrisian wolves ruled its surface unchallenged. It showed me the genetic tampering that created the Primarchs, the specific modifications made to Leman Russ that linked him to those ancient predators. It showed me the fatal flaw in the Canis Helix, not an accident of genetic science but a deliberate feature, a time bomb planted in the gene seed of the VI Legion. Most terribly, it showed me my future. The inevitable surrender to the curse, the transformation into a wolfen, the years of mindless savagery before death at the hands of my own battle brothers, it offered an alternative. Acceptance of its blessing would stabilize the Canis Helix, allow me to retain my mind while accessing the full power of the wolf. All it asked in return was freedom from its aeons-long imprisonment. The wolf within me yearned to accept, recognizing in this entity a kindred spirit, a predator of unimaginable power. The man I still was recognized the deception, the subtle corruption being offered in the guise of salvation. This was no benevolent entity but a Xenos abomination. Perhaps one of the beings that had corrupted the word-bearers and their excavated artifacts. I activated the emergency teleporter Homer, summoning an immediate extraction and orbital bombardment of the excavation site. The entity's psychic scream of rage as I rejected its offer echoed through my mind, breaking down the carefully constructed barriers between man and wolf. The transformation began immediately, more violent and complete than any previous episode. I felt my armor splitting as my body expanded, bone and muscle reconfiguring into the form of the wolfen. But this time, there was no wolf priest to call me back, no ritual words to anchor my humanity. There was only the beast, triumphant at last in its centuries-long siege against my identity. My last human memory is of staring at my hands as they changed into claws, watching the skin darken and thicken into a leathery hide covered with coarse fur. I remember feeling not fear or regret but a terrible sense of inevitability. This had always been my fate from the moment the Canis Helix entered my bloodstream in the initiation chamber beneath the Fang. What followed exists not in memory but in the official records of the Space Wolves chapter, related to me years later when a measure of sanity returned. The Great Company arrived to find not a Chaos base, but a crater of glass and fused rock where the orbital bombardment had struck. They also found a trail of mutilated word-bearers, a path of destruction leading away from the blast zone into the planet's dense forests. They pursued this trail, recognizing the signs of a wolfen at work, the savagery of the kills, the bestial trophy-taking, the ritual aspects that went beyond mere predatory instinct. For 3 days, they hunted their fallen brother across the hostile landscape of Tertius Gamma, following a trail of blood and broken bodies. On the 4th day, they found me. Or rather, they found what I had become. A fully transformed wolfen, physically powerful beyond even Astarte's norm, but with no recognition of former battle brothers or sworn oaths. I had regressed entirely to the beast, the man subsumed completely beneath the triumphant wolf. Standard protocol dictated immediate termination, a clean death delivered by brothers in arms, the only mercy that could be offered to one lost to the curse. Wolflord Crom himself led the execution party, bringing with him the wolf priest who had overseen much of my conditioning over the centuries. They cornered me in a ravine, cutting off all avenues of escape with disciplined fire from bolters and plasma guns. I fought with the mindless ferocity of the truly lost, wounding 3 battle brothers before Crom engaged me directly, his frost blade against my claws, his tactical genius against my bestial cunning. The duel was brief but brutal. Though empowered by the curse, I was no match for a Wolflord in Terminator armor wielding a master-crafted frost blade. The killing stroke should have severed my head from my body, ending my saga with the clean finality of cold steel. Instead, at the crucial moment, the wolf priest intervened. He had seen something in my eyes in that final instant, some flicker of recognition or humanity that gave him pause. Against Crom's direct order, he used his Crozius Arcanum to render me unconscious rather than allowing the killing blow to fall. I was taken in chains aboard the strike cruiser, confined in a specially constructed null field chamber designed to contain the most dangerous warp entities. For the journey back to Fenris, I raged against my bonds, all traces of humanity apparently erased by the curse. The Wolflord argued repeatedly for my execution, citing chapter tradition and practical concerns for the safety of the fleet. The wolf priest maintained his conviction that something of the man remained beneath the beast's exterior. Upon return to the Fang, I was transferred to the depths of the fortress monastery, to chambers ancient even by the standards of the Space Wolves. There, in rooms carved from the living rock of Fenris itself, and inscribed with wards dating back to the time of Russ, the wolf priests began their work. What followed was not an attempt to reverse the transformation. The physical changes wrought by the Wolfen curse are permanent, irreversible by any technology or ritual known to the chapter. Instead, they sought to reach the man buried within the beast, to rekindle the spark of humanity and consciousness that the wolf priest had glimpsed in that final moment on Tertius Gamma. The process took years. Ritual hypnotherapy sessions conducted by senior wolf priests. Experimental treatments developed by iron priests based on recovered fragments of the Emperor's original work on the Primarch project. Exposure to sacred relics of Leman Russ himself, objects believed to carry an echo of the Primarch's presence. Progress came in microscopic increments. The first breakthrough was eye contact, maintained for a full second rather than the animal glance of a predator assessing prey. Then recognition, a change in posture and scent when familiar battle brothers entered the containment chamber. Finally, after nearly a decade of constant work, speech, a single word, guttural and distorted by a mouth and throat no longer designed for human language, but unmistakable. Brother. From that first word, recovery accelerated. The beast remained ascendant physically, the wolfen form permanent and unchangeable, but the mind of the warrior reasserted itself with increasing strength. I relearned language, recalled my oaths and history, recognized my identity as something distinct from the animal instincts that had consumed me. What emerged from this process was neither fully man nor wholly beast, but something unprecedented in chapter records. A wolfen with consciousness and volition, a monster with a soul. The wolf priests debated endlessly about what my existence meant for their understanding of the curse. Some saw hope that other lost brothers might be recovered through similar methods. Others warned that I represented a dangerous anomaly, a potential vector for corruption that should not be permitted to exist. Wolf Lord Crom remained skeptical, demanding regular tests of my loyalty and control. These trials were harsh by necessity. Exposure to the scent and sight of blood, simulated combat scenarios, direct psychic probing by rune priests to assess the stability of my mind. Through it all, the tenuous balance I had achieved held, though often by the narrowest of margins. After 15 years of confinement and testing, a decision was finally reached regarding my fate. I would not be executed, as was traditional, for those claimed by the curse. Neither would I be released to serve as before, my condition making that impossible. Instead, I was assigned a unique role within the chapter, one suited to my unique condition. I became the keeper of lost brothers, guardian of the chamber deep within the Fang, where those in the early stages of the wolfen transformation are kept. Not yet fully lost, but beyond recovery by conventional means, these battle brothers exist in a twilight state between man and beast. Too valuable to execute, too dangerous to employ in normal operations, they represent the chapter's most closely guarded shame. My transformation allows me to communicate with these brothers in ways no normal Astartes could manage. I understand their struggle intimately. I can interpret their growls and posture, translate their needs and remaining thoughts to the wolf priests who study them. In turn, I serve as a living example that the mind can survive even total physical corruption, giving hope to those still cognizant enough to understand what awaits them. It is a lonely existence. I am neither fully part of the chapter nor completely severed from it. Brothers who knew me before the transformation treat me with a mixture of respect and wariness. Newer initiates view me with superstitious dread, a walking reminder of the curse that lurks in their own gene seed. Only among my charges, the brothers suspended in their own transformative processes, do I find a kind of kinship. There are moments of clarity amidst the constant struggle for control, days when the balance between man and wolf seems almost natural, when I can recall my centuries of service with something approaching human perspective. Other days, the beast surges forward, and it takes all my remaining willpower to maintain even the most basic elements of my identity. The wolf priests continue their study of my condition, hoping to derive some insight that might help future generations of space wolves better resist the curse. I submit to their tests and experiments without complaint. If my suffering can spare even one brother from my fate, it gives purpose to an existence that might otherwise seem merely a cruel joke of the gods. On rare occasions, I am permitted to leave my underground domain and walk the upper levels of the Fang, always under guard, always carefully monitored, but able to see the stars over Fenris once more, to feel the biting wind on my altered flesh. During one such excursion, nearly 30 years after my transformation, I encountered a young Bloodclaw who stared at me with more curiosity than fear. "You are Bjornrik," he said, showing remarkable courage in directly addressing me. "They speak of you in the training halls." I nodded, not trusting my voice in that moment. The beast was close to the surface, agitated by the unfamiliar surroundings and the presence of potential prey. "They say you chose this," the young warrior continued, his tone suggesting he found the notion difficult to believe. "That you could have died cleanly, but instead chose to exist as you are now." I considered his words carefully before responding. My voice, when it came, was a rumbling growl that nonetheless formed coherent, low Gothic. "Not chose," I corrected him. "Survived. There is a difference." The Bloodclaw seemed to weigh this distinction, his expression thoughtful despite his youth. For what purpose? What glory remains in such an existence? It was a question I had asked myself countless times during the long years of my confinement. Why continue this half-life, this constant battle against the beast within? Why not seek the clean end of a frostblade and whatever reward awaited in the halls of Russ? "Glory is for sagas," I told him, the words coming with increasing difficulty as the wolf stirred within me. "Service does not require glory, only endurance." The young warrior nodded slowly, respect replacing the curiosity in his eyes. He placed his fist against his chest in the traditional salute of the chapter before moving away, leaving me to my thoughts and the ever-present struggle for control. That brief exchange crystallized something I had understood instinctively but never articulated, even to myself. The Space Wolves revere the warrior ideal, celebrating heroic deeds and glorious deaths in their sagas and rituals. But beneath the veneer of savage nobility lies a deeper truth. We are weapons, created for a specific purpose, our lives dedicated to service rather than personal glory. The wolf within us is not a curse in the traditional sense. It is the price we pay for the power we wield, the necessary counterbalance to our enhanced abilities. Some brothers pay that price in small increments over centuries of service. Others, like myself, pay it all at once in a catastrophic transformation, but all sons of Russ live with the knowledge that the beast waits within, patient and eternal. In the decades since my transformation, other brothers have joined me in the twilight existence between man and wolfen. Some have retained enough of their minds to serve alongside me as guardians and interpreters. Others have slipped further into bestial savagery despite our best efforts. Each case is unique, a reflection of the individual warrior's mental strength and the specific circumstances of his transformation. The wolf priests have developed new rituals based on their observations of us, techniques that have helped several brothers step back from the brink of total transformation. This is perhaps my greatest contribution to the chapter, the knowledge gained from my condition saving others from a similar fate. It is not glory in the traditional sense, but it is service of the highest order. There are whispers among the more traditionally minded battle brothers that we should not exist, that our continued presence represents a deviation from the Emperor's design. They cite the ancient practices of the chapter, where those claimed by the curse were granted clean deaths rather than prolonged half-lives. Sometimes, in my darker moments, I find myself agreeing with them. But then I remember the words of the wolf priest who saved me on that blood-soaked day on Tertius Gamma. The true test of a son of Russ, he told me years later, is not how gloriously he fights or how nobly he dies. It is how he endures the burden placed upon him by his gene seed, his chapter, and his oath to the All-Father. By that measure, Perhaps I have not failed entirely. I endure, I serve. The wolf within me remains powerful, constantly testing the boundaries of my control, but it no longer rules unchallenged. We exist in a state of perpetual conflict, neither side able to claim complete victory. This, I have come to believe, is the true nature of the space wolves. Not the noble savages depicted in imperial propaganda, nor the mindless beasts feared by our enemies, but warriors caught in the eternal struggle between human reason and animal instinct. We draw power from the wolf, but we must never surrender completely to its call. The curse is simply the most visible manifestation of this struggle, the physical expression of a conflict that rages within every son of Rus from the moment the Canis Helix enters his bloodstream. Those who maintain the balance become heroes of the chapter, their names recorded in sagas that will outlive their mortal remains. Those who lose the struggle become cautionary tales or, like myself, living reminders of the price of failure. Yet even in failure, there is service. Even in transformation, there is purpose. This is what the outsiders never understand about the space wolves. Our savagery is not mindless. Our fury is not undirected. Even at our most bestial, we remain weapons of the Emperor, tools crafted for a specific purpose and dedicated to its fulfillment. I will likely never again know the glory of battle at the forefront of a great company assault. I will never feel the camaraderie of the pack, or the simple satisfaction of a hunt well concluded. My existence now is defined by limitations and constant vigilance against the beast that shares my skin. But I endure, I serve. In my own way, I remain a son of Rus, a warrior of the Fang. The wolf within me snarls its eternal challenge, and each day I answer with renewed determination. This is my burden, my duty, my purpose, not glory but service, not savage nobility but patient endurance. In the darkness beneath the Fang, among brothers caught in various stages of transformation, I have found a kind of peace in this understanding. We are what we were made to be, no more and no less. The curse is not our enemy but our nature, to be managed rather than defeated. Bjornrik Haldvar, once Bloodclaw, once Lone Wolf, now Keeper of Lost Brothers, my saga continues, though it will never be sung in the feast halls of the Fang. My service endures, though it takes forms no aspirant would recognize or desire. The wolf remains, eternal and hungry within me, but it no longer defines me completely. This is what it means to be a space wolf. Not the glory or the savagery that outsiders see, but the eternal struggle between man and beast. The burden we bear, the price we pay, the service we render to the Allfather, to the chapter, to mankind itself. In the end, perhaps, there is a kind of glory in endurance, a nobility in bearing what cannot be changed. A warrior's honor in facing each day as a battle to be won through strength of will rather than force of arms. I am Bjornrik Haldvar of Fenris. I am wolf and man, monster and warrior. I endure. I serve. That is enough. That must be enough. For in the grim darkness of the far future, glory is fleeting, but service is eternal.